Well, hello, and a very happy Friday to you. Hope you're having a great week. Steve Hook here. Welcome to the Right Hook. It's good to be with you as we celebrate Commie Day. And we're going to talk all about what's going on with this May Day rallies going across. It's not just across the U.S., by the way. It's all over Europe as well, and African nations are celebrating Commie Day. And it's something that we're going to talk about today. And with me to help talk is Michael Lauber, who joins us. Michael, of course, from the Insurrectionist, right here on Ex American News. Michael, hello, sir. How are you, brother?
Greetings, comrade.
Good.
I'm
Greetings, comrade. Good to see you. Yeah, it's National Commie Day, and teachers unions all over the fruited plain have decided to take off, and some school districts are completely closed for the day. Others decided to make a compromise. We're not going to close the school, but all kids, we will give you a free bus ride to your rallying point, and you'll get an excused day off. But if you choose not to do the commie basically field trip, you can go to school. I mean, I wonder how many kids are going to take advantage of that. Probably not many. Um, and this is happening all over the country right now, Michael. And like I said, not just here. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in Africa. It's happening in Asia. What do you make of this rise in communism? And it is flat out communism. I don't give a damn if they call it social democrat, whatever. It's commie is what it is.
yeah.
What do you make of all of this?
Well, I mean, it just again underscores the point why we've got to get rid of a lot of these blue-haired moonbat wine mom teachers that aren't there to educate your kids. They're not there to teach reading, writing, arithmetic, our history. They're there to indoctrinate them and recruit them to this leftist, this globalist communist movement. They're there to indoctrinate them into the LGBTQMS13 ideology. They're there to, make them little climate activists or recruit them to the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. They're not there to do their job anymore, and something's got to be done about it. Like I've said before, when we used to burn witches at the stake, we had a lot fewer witches to deal with, and maybe we need to look at policy that worked in the past.
Yeah, but I mean, it really is. It's funny because when Trump came into office, it was obvious the jokes were TDS and all this. I mean, and then all of a sudden people started saying, hey, guess what? It really does exist. I mean,
Yeah.
here we are, we're trying to be snarky about it, but these people have actually gone around the bend several times in their absolute madness. An example of this is they're all rushing to Jimmy Kimmel's defense, saying, "Oh my God, you're trying to stifle this guy's free speech by getting him fired." So they have a problem with that. And the same exact people are saying, "Why didn't the guy that rushed the stage at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Why was he using a shotgun? He should have used." He should have used a solid round slug, hollow points or whatever. I mean, these people are absolute crazy,
Yeah.
and the fact that we're even having to deal with it is kind of a scary prospect, really. But let's go to the clips and just show you just exactly how insane this really is, because it's hundreds of thousands of kids are off school today. It's not it's not an excused holiday or anything. It's Commie Day. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Let's go to cut one. This is from Fox News this morning.
Wide protests as more than 20 school districts canceled classes today. Chicago stopped short of canceling classes, but the mayor is encouraging kids to join the protest today.
And so, young people today, you're here by choice. You are here because you are creating action that will turn into power. Do not let anyone take your power away from you as young people. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Thank you for raising your voices as young people.
And as we mentioned,
Oh,
I
oops.
mean,
Sorry, I cut that early.
no, that's okay. It's okay because we've got a few more that are very similar in messaging. This is there. You've got the idiot mayor of Chicago. Um, school isn't important to the kids. Learning about actual American history doesn't really mean much to teachers anymore. Um, learning reading, writing, arithmetic, that's old news, man. Come on, that's part of the white patriarchy now. Get with the program. It's all about the alphabet people and the multicolored flags and anything that says screw traditional American values, traditions, morals. All of that is old hat. Get out of here. You must be a racist if you believe any of this. And that's what Brandon Johnson is up there saying right there is
Yeah.
basically, "Oh, don't let anybody take your power away. We know you can't. We know you're gonna, get out with. We're gonna matriculate you through the system. You're not gonna know how to do any of this crap that's important in your life, but at least you'll know how to beg for free shit, and you'll be able to, and you will definitely, deeply indoctrinate you into hating people that are successful. Success is, because we all know that it was rich millionaires and billionaires that forced everybody to get the COVID jab. It was billionaires that raised your taxes. It was the rich guy that lives in the street that you really want down the street. He lives down the street. He's loaded, and the reason you're not loaded is because of him. This is the kind of class warfare that the left has always played around with. But since Trump has come into power, it's even more off the hook. They even said that I was watching the news and kind of flipping channels. Protests in Europe are even raging against Trump and Israel. That's what this is. This is total anti-democracy, is what's on display here.
Yeah. I just think it's funny. It's somebody whose approval rating hovers between 6 and 8%. Brandon Johnson is the gall to talk to anybody right now, but whatever. You know, Chicago's a city where several of their school districts, fourth graders, only 3% of them are reading at grade level. So this really doesn't seem like the right thing. Now, in Illinois in particular, some of the schools did give them the day off.
Yeah.
We covered this earlier in the week. So, and some of them are giving them a grade for showing up. They're calling it a student activism day. This gets them out in the out in the world. So anybody that didn't participate, they're going to fail them, because again, this isn't about educating your kids. It's about weaponizing them against you. They want them as dumb as possible, so they are completely dependent on the government for everything. They do not care about educating your kids. And this is the position of the National Teachers Union. In Florida, they're doing this right now. The Florida Teachers Union was trying to pressure schools, and some of them, of course, went along with it, to do the same thing. Call it an activism day, drag them out of the classroom, make them go protest the evil orange Hitler. And he's being a meanie about immigration. And that's basically their point. But once again, this is to pressure parents. This is to weaponize the kids in the school. All these teachers ought to be fired. I mean, honestly, they ought to be drug out in the street and beat to death with a fire hose, because we need to send a message that this can't happen again. Because again, this is not their role in the classroom. And that's unfortunately a lot of them are getting involved in this stuff for the wrong reasons. They are there to indoctrinate. They are not there to educate. Every one of those teachers should be removed and never allowed to teach again. Otherwise, this problem is only going to continue. We have to address this.
Yeah, well, Trump has been trying to address it by shuttering the Department of Education to the extent that he can. And it's, if anything, it's had kind of a blowback effect, where these unions, they've got millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they're going to use every penny of it to keep themselves alive, to make themselves more important than they are. I think you're right about one thing. All of these school districts involved should have their federal funding stopped immediately.
Zeroed.
Zero, not one penny. No more money for you. You're not getting a penny. Now, of course, that involves risk too, because then you get parents of these kids that are like, look, I had nothing to do with this shit, right? I didn't want my kid to do this. In fact, I kept my kid home from school so he wouldn't or she wouldn't have to do this and be subjugated to this indoctrination. But now you're going to shutter the schools essentially, or you're going to cut off all funding. So now what am I supposed to do? That is what the left is counting on. They're saying,
Well,
we're going to
too
make it
bad.
so painful for you that we're going to make it a political nightmare and a quagmire for you to get involved. And I think Trump, being Trump, is going to say, yeah, screw you. We're not going to fund you. And I hope the hell he does. I hope he does.
You know what they also should do is hand out all these teachers' home addresses to all the students and their parents so they can go talk to them about it. You know, they love to play the victim. They love to weaponize and utilize their power that they have at these schools and other places. So let's give them a taste of their own medicine. You know, if it's okay for them to go harass ICE agents at their home, I don't see how these teachers are any different. I think they should organize and go set up on their front lawn. Give them a taste of their own medicine, and maybe some of them will back down. I know they're all going to go cry about it and say how horrible this is, and we live in a fascist state and Hitler and blah, 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 like they always do. But again, these people are not going to learn a lesson until there's consequences.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now let's take a look at the second clip. This is LA. Wouldn't shock you to know that there's protests going on in Los Angeles on National Commie Day. Here's what's going on in LA.
Happening in New York City and Washington. But meanwhile, as we mentioned, protests are happening all over the country, including Chicago and, as pictured here, Los Angeles. The crowds seem to have been growing hour by hour here. In some cases, we're seeing marches. Some cases, we're seeing crowds growing, signs up in protests of, don't go to work, don't go to school. In some cases, they have said, don't go shopping. This is the message of workers instead of billionaires is the goal, according to those who have organized these protests. John?
You know, Sandra, I get the no work and no shopping thing, but the no school? I mean, I don't understand why you're promoting keeping kids out of school. That makes absolutely zero sense. If you want to have a prosperous country, you've got to have an educated population, and we're doing a horrible job at educating our kids for the most part anyways, so why would you encourage them to take the day off school?
Well, he kind of okay, enough. He kind of answered his own questions, John Roberts did just there. Why it doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense if you want to keep the kids stupid. It makes perfect sense if you want to manipulate their minds and not actually affect their education. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing it in LA, they're doing it in Chicago, they're doing it in Atlanta, they're doing it in Philly. By the way, Philadelphia just yesterday shuttered 17 schools because they don't have the funding to keep these schools afloat. And these are all schools, these are not rich white kid schools. These are poor urban schools are now going to be shuttered. Why? Because they pissed away all the money on stupid crap like this. The unions have so hijacked our public school system. I mean, look, if you like the weekend, you can thank a union. Oh, screw that old talk. Nobody's saying that unions aren't good in and of themselves, private unions. But once you put a union in charge of teachers, and then the teachers start realizing we can make big bank off of this union if we play our cards right, and the union presidents like Randy Weingarten and her ilk are more than happy to say, you know what, COVID, shutter the schools for a year and a half. And we need more money now because we're doing tele-learning. So we need more money coming in. It's just so obvious what they're doing. And I am disgusted by it. I really can't stand these people anymore.
You know, maybe we got to take advantage of their union system. Let's start with the school district. Start negotiating that performance-based pay so that they keep making our kids stupider and stupider. They're not getting any raises. In fact, they're going backwards. We're going to reduce your pay until you're performing to par, that we have standards here at this school, and you're not meeting them. Maybe that's the game to play. But
well, gee, you're treading very, very close to meritocracy there, my friend. What are you, some kind of white patriarch racist? I mean, that's their answer.
Yeah, well, that's fine. And then we can start firing the teachers that won't get in compliance with this. I mean, again, we brought this up before that, kids have gotten stupider and stupider ever since the Department of Education was funded. We've slipped further and further in the ranking, and it's because they're totally their focus in most government schools, and that's what they are. They're not public schools. They are government schools, is completely off base. And until we address the problem, we're going to have more of this because, again, they're not hiring teachers to be good teachers anymore. They're hiring activists. And sorry, that doesn't belong in the classroom. I don't care who you are or what your stupid degree's in, and that this is the only job for you. That's not my problem. I guess you're gonna have to learn how to bend tacos and flip burgers and pour coffee because you clearly don't have the school skills needed to be in the classroom anymore. And we're gonna have to just
Yeah.
start treating it the way it is. I don't care how much they cry about it or their feelings. We have to take this back and get our whole country back on a path where they are actually educating children, where there is discipline in the classroom once again, where they are only focusing on reading, writing, arithmetic, our actual history, not the 1619 project crap, no global warming nonsense, hard sciences. And then,
STEM,
once
STEM, for God's sakes.
exactly. Then, we'll have a good 10 years of that, flush all this trash out. I'll put a lot of them in mental institutions. I mean, half these teachers should be registered sex offenders. They shouldn't be anywhere near students ever, or children for that matter, especially the ones that are, hiding this LGBTQ clubs, calling it an art club, tricking people to go there so they can recruit them. Every one of them should be a registered sex offender and never allowed to teach again.
Well, let me just say this by way of just kind of a disclaimer. My mother was a teacher. My sister-in-law was a teacher. Both of my nieces were teachers. And I always hear this, oh, teachers are heroes. Some teachers are
Not
heroes.
anymore.
Some plumbers are heroes. Some electricians are heroes. But your job does not define you. And if your job as a teacher, you think, is to shape and mold the younger generations into believing exactly the way you do, you're not a hero at all. Not even a little bit. Especially if it's from coming from a political point of view, which they do, and they always do. Especially
Yeah.
if they're union. By the way, all of those people I just mentioned in my family, they were all non-union teachers in Atlanta and parts south. They weren't any of these the National Education Association union or any of that garbage. They were or the AFT and any of that. They're actually, and they were good teachers, and they were great, and
Yeah.
they went and they held their kids accountable by test grades and by did you do your homework? Stuff that used to be kind of old hat. Nowadays, you get people advocating for no homework. Kids shouldn't be doing anything at home other than maybe watching some TikTok videos. That's all they really need to be doing. And when they get to school, we'll teach them just how bad Trump is. And
Yeah.
that's what they're doing. And unfortunately, kids are susceptible to this stuff. This is why Hamas starts so young on their kids. This is why radical Islam starts so young on their kids, because once you start that, it's very easy to convince these kids they're going to grow up just steeped in this shit. And then they're going to be little commies and they're going to be out there leading the next rallies and the next protests. Now, if you don't think that the U.S. public school system is doing this to kids, let's go to cut 3. Check this out.
Also obtain the detailed CPS curriculum ahead of the May Day activities. It includes this suggestion for preschool to grades 2. Quote, to show 2 or 3 kid-friendly photos of protests. Notice signs, how people seem to be feeling. We asked CPS parent Joe Williams what he thinks.
At 3 years old, no, that child should be in school learning and being educated so he or she can be where they need to be to get to that next level.
For older high school students, there are lessons about ICE violating rights, and students are asked, quote, what hardships are people in your community facing since Trump was reelected last November? And who is responsible for the situation we are in?
Here's an idea. You are
Yeah.
responsible. Take a little take a little accountability in your life for a change. But you see that dad's got it right. No, 3 years old, of course not. I would
Fire-
argue that at 15 years old they shouldn't be either. None of
Exactly. Fire and blacklist every one of these people and let them cry about it. That's the only answer to this problem. Is we're going to have to just eliminate the people that have this infected way of thinking that want to politicize their classroom. They can't be allowed to teach ever again. I don't care if you just went along with it because you were afraid to say something or stand up to the mean principal or whoever pushed on you. Too bad. You shouldn't be in that classroom anymore. We got to get rid of you.
It really is sickening to watch it because it is ramped up so much in the last, since Trump came down the golden escalator, frankly. It's been ramping up and ramping up. And the one question, who is responsible for the situation we find ourselves in? That's kind of a self-evident problem, if you ask me. If you're looking to blame somebody else for your problems, well, there's your problem. Um,
Yeah.
Trump,
I mean,
Trump hasn't done any of this. Trump has encouraged love of nation. Whether you love or hate Trump, it's irrelevant.
well,
It's
and
irrelevant.
if you had cameras in the classroom, which is another thing that we should have, is 24/7 cameras in the classroom, so these teachers can't hide what they're doing in there, the indoctrination. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. If you answered Biden, he left the border open for 4 years. You could watch these same teachers have a meltdown about it.
Yeah, they would, and they would, and they
Yeah,
would. They'd probably send you to the principal's office. Um,
exactly. That's why they got to
it's
go. We can't have any mercy.
I,
I'm telling you.
well, I'm not. Listen, I saw some of this crap this morning, and my blood just began to boil because I just realized these people have no idea what they're cheering on. And it's one thing, it's hard to get mad at a 14-year-old kid out there screaming against ICE and screaming against Trump and all that when you know that 14-year-old kid is getting it with both barrels every time they step foot in the classroom. They're getting it from both barrels when they do doom scrolling on TikTok. They certainly get it from their Hollywood favorite actors and actresses.
Mhm.
To a growing degree, they get it from professional athletes. Sadly, they're getting it from all of the movers and shakers of society, of the social zeitgeist, are all telling them the same thing. Trump is evil. Um, Capitalism sucks. It sucks. Um, Communism is the best. Now, if you were to ask any of these teachers, why don't you educate your children on successful socialist communist countries? That would be a very short lesson. That would be a
No.
very zero, none.
To have the kids go to a communist grading scale. They're all going to share their grades from now on, because the smartest people are benefiting from. It's probably they have a better home or whatever, and the people that are
Sure.
failing, it isn't because they don't try. So we're going to take that A, we're going to turn it down to a D, we're going to average out the classroom, and that way everybody gets to pass. I mean, the minute you do that, they're all going to actually understand what communism is and rebel. So,
They did that.
but
There
again,
was an experiment like that, and I forget it was several years ago. I had it on my old show
yeah.
where a professor at a college actually did that, and these same leftists started raising all kinds of hell about it. They're like,
Oh,
"I did
exactly.
the work," and they're like, "Well, wait a minute now, you did the work. You're entitled. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got. Look at those shoes you're wearing. Look at those nice jeans you've got on. This guy over here, he may have slept in class, but look at, he doesn't have the same wherewithal that you do. He doesn't have the same money. He doesn't
Yeah.
have the same, connections you do. So therefore, just to make it fair, we're going to even. And the professor got roundly criticized for that because he gave them a very real life plan or life lesson rather, with with that little stunt. Obviously, he didn't stick to it. I mean, the
Yeah.
grades were not divvied up, but he scared the hell out of them. And you're right. That's what they ought to do. I just
Yeah.
I'm just concerned when I see what's happening in Europe, what's happening all over the place. It's this rise of and meanwhile, Russia can't put down Ukraine. They're lost over 1 million men. There's a communist victory for you. China is sucking eggs right now because they can't get any oil or gas. There's another communist victory for you. Maduro rots in a prison right now, in a U.S. prison. There's some more communist success stories for you, and yet they don't learn.
No, well, they're not capable of it. They're too committed to the ideology. Um, they won't
Exactly.
learn when you show them direct facts because they don't care. That doesn't fit the narrative that they've made up in their head. This is the same. That's the same reason why that you won't get any an honest portrayal of our history of communism or anything else in the classroom. Instead, you just get this made up version. It's a 6-year-old's interpretation of the facts, basically. But that's again, that's why these people have to go. We cannot leave them in the classroom. Period. Because they already have this woke mind virus, and there is no fixing that. We've already seen that over the last couple of years. The TDS only gets worse and worse and worse. So that we just have to cut off their access to children. probably put them all in a mental institution somewhere, or give them one-way tickets out of the country, whatever. But they cannot be allowed to teach ever again. And we do need to take this threat seriously and actually do something about it. And I know a lot of blue states are going to cry about it. Maybe they can all go to California, and we can just forget about the kids in California. They're going to have to get a bad education because that's what the left wants. They're always going to be useless. But then, if we put other policies in place where we cut off welfare benefits after a certain length of time or whatever, the state, they're just going to be the state's problem, and we're just going to have to deal with it. We're just going to have to let that generation die off, and that's really all there is to it.
Yeah, well, it really is. It's sad to see because it's obviously their solution um is, is way worse than the perceived problem that they're projecting onto all of their
Yeah.
students and their little bubble of liberal Marxist bubble dwellers that they associate with. And it reminds me of that. You saw that girl, what was her name? The girl from TPUSA that got attacked when she went to cover that
Oh,
anti-ICE.
Savannah Hernandez.
Savannah Hernandez. And now three family members have all been indicted. They the state prosecutor wasn't going to ring them up for basically anything. They were going to let them walk because that's Minnesota after all. And then Kash Patel and the FBI and then the DOJ jumped on and said, okay, now we're bringing charges. But the reason I mentioned this story, and you can say, well, how does this have anything to do? Well, because how do you think that family, these three, it was a father and two daughters, and the wife, I think, too. Maybe I think there were three of them.
The one daughter is not brainwashed. One of them actually put out a statement about her family, how horrible they are, and how this attack, how horrible it was. But yeah, the other daughter, mom and dad, have been arrested.
Yeah, and this is what I mean by it's really easy now. That I feel sorriest for the daughter, even though she is a portly young lady who which is a nice way of saying she's a lard ass. And she is, and if that sounds personal or like I don't care because I can't stand what she did to Savannah Hernandez. I mean, blowing whistles in her ear as hard as she could, doing all stuff that leftists typically do. Well, this is exactly what public schools are turning our kids into. That kind of a person.
Yep.
They can scream all they want about, Trump is this, Trump is that, no kings. He's Hitler, all this, and all of his supporters are brainwashed cult members and all this crap that they believe. But the cult members are the ones that go around pushing a 5'4" girl to the ground because they just don't like her being at their little anti-ICE protest. That's Hitlerian tactics. That's brown shirt tactics. And the left celebrates those people like they're heroes as they project their hatred onto Trump and say that Trump and his supporters are the dangerous ones. It's just laughable.
Oh, exactly. Again, it's upside down and backwards. People are totally detached from reality. I mean, this is what happens when you don't treat mental illness for a generation. That's how you end up with people like this. So again, there's going to have to be some pain to fix this problem. But that's the only way to fix it. We can't leave things the way they are. And unfortunately, some of these kids, their lives are now ruined too because of these teachers that we're not going to be able to get them to snap out of it. Especially a lot of the ones they pushed into this trans ideology and other stuff.
Sure.
Now they are now permanently damaged. They are going to be a permanent ward to the state because they'll never be able to live a successful life. And it's because we sat on our hands and we didn't do something sooner. So time for consequences, time for change, and we've got to do that now. And I think today just really illustrates that.
I think today really does illustrate it. And I think that Trump is probably paying attention to that because I think that from what I'm seeing, a lot of people are very, very pissed off about what's going on. Here we are on the eve of our 250th anniversary coming up July 4th. And we've got teachers unions and we've got large scale media types doing all they can to promote the fact that America really does kind of suck. 250 years of evil slave owners, they would have you believe. We've liberated more people than any nation in the history of the planet. The United States has. We are the breadbasket for the world. We have done many great things in this nation, but to listen to these teachers who are not educators, by the way, they are indoctrinators. They are not educators. I'm not saying all teachers are bad, But I'm just saying that if you're a member of this union and you're saying, let's take the day off, and by the way, why don't you tell us where the foundation of the term May Day came from? Well, it came from communist, and teach the real evils of communism. But these teachers, many of them, sadly, have decided that their job is really all about indoctrination and not education. Now, we talked about Chicago. Chicago school districts did not give the day off to students, but they kind of did in a way. And you'll be happy to know that Chicago taxpayers will be on the hook for all of this. Let's go to cut 4.
Across the world will commemorate what's called May Day. It's also known as International Workers' Day. And the Chicago Teachers Union had pushed to have the day off school to participate. Instead, though, the CTU and Chicago Public Schools reached a compromise for participation in today's civic action events. As part of that agreement, the district will provide buses for some students and teachers to attend a rally in Union Park at 1 this afternoon. School participation is determined by the principal, though, and students and teachers can opt out of the rally and stay at school. Some parents have voiced concerns about how this will impact the quality of instruction for those that stay.
Can you imagine if we asked them to provide buses to take students to a Trump rally? I mean, it would have been absolute meltdown. There would probably be teachers literally holding students hostage.
Imagine if they remember when what's his name, the kid Nick Sandman, got in trouble because a crazy racist Native American guy was banging a drum in his face, and the media turned it into a look at this guy smirking at a person of color. And then now imagine if public schools said, we're going to bus all of our kids to the pro-life rally in DC. How do you think that would go over?
Oh, again, you'd have them literally taking people hostage. Yeah, that school that Salmon went to is an hour from me. They actually had to put in extra security features and other stuff to protect the students there because they were getting constantly harassed afterwards by media and other wackos. One of my clients got brought in to help put like bulletproof glass and other stuff in the front of the school after that happened. That they need. Yeah, I mean, it was literal harassment. These people are nuts. We got to start treating them that way.
Now, do me a favor, re-rack that video just for one reason, because I want you to listen to the way the reporterette talks about these rallies and listen to the way she soft sells what it is. And make no mistake, what it is a communist rally. That's what it is. But listen to the way they describe this rally.
Across the world will commemorate what's called May Day. It's also known as International Workers' Day. And the Chicago Teachers Union had pushed to have the day off school to participate. Instead, though, the CTU and Chicago Public Schools reached a compromise for participation in today's civic action events. As part of that agreement, the district will provide
May Day, also known as International Workers' Day. Sounds so friendly, doesn't it? And then this day of civic action. Now, you see, you wouldn't get that if it was we're taking school off and we're taking everyone down to learn about the Constitution. They wouldn't say that. They would say this is patriotic fervor run amok. These people are crazy. These people are nationalists. These people are xenophobes. They would use every phobe and ism in the world to describe it. But when it comes to communism, they're perfectly fine with that. Marxism, bravo. All of that is good. Socialism, we love it. That's the word we like to use when we really mean communism. This is pathetic.
Yeah, they'd frame it as if they were taking your kids to go to a literal Nazi book burning. And then they'd want to, track down the students and the parents. There'd need to be psychological exams. They'd get CPS involved. Because, again, this is who these people are. And we really do need to start turning those same tools on them. These people are not fit to be around children. They've proven it. So there have to be consequences. We got to pull them out of the classroom. We've got to put a lot of them in jail. A lot of them are going to be labeled as sex offenders. We need to make sure they can never do this again. And again, we need to actually enforce the law and actually do something about this.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think, Michael? Because X and all the social media accounts are the social websites are just blowing up because of this. And I got to say, if I'm honest, it's almost a 50-50 split, which is no big shocker. The angry ones tend to be the liberals. They're like spitting fire saying, hooray, we're taking our democracy back, which is ironic as hell because they're, if anything, they're trying to strip this country of real democracy. But what do you think Trump is going to do? Do you think the pressure is going to be brought to bear on Trump to do something? Because he has a huge, in fact, we've got a clip in a little while. He has a huge rally today at the Villages in Florida. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people are lining up to go to that. So that's a good sign. But that's the Villages in Florida. You don't get any redder than that. That's as red as you're
Yeah.
going to get in this nation right there. It's a beautiful part of the state. It's also the STD capital of Central Florida.
Yes.
But well, a bunch of retirees. What do you want? But my point is that I think that this is becoming such I think it's almost a tipping point here where we're at with these leftists that are pushing this garbage down our kids' throats. And I think that people around the country are reaching out to their senators and congressmen and women and saying, you better do something about this shit because my taxpayers are going to fund these schools. And now, if
Yeah.
I lived in Chicago and found out that my taxpayer dollars were going to fund a field trip to a communist rally day, I'd be livid. I'd say, I want every penny of my money back. I'm not spending a dime on that. What do you think Trump's going to do?
Nothing. I don't think he'll do much anything. You know, they started to take some action with the Department of Education earlier. They kind of backed down on all that. They really just need to close it and shut off all federal dollars. But I think he might say some tough words, but I just don't see him really doing much about this. But also, like, it does need to be taken care of at the state and local level. You guys need to be running for your own school boards, even if that's just to be a disruptor and to point out and warn people about what's going on. If we can take over the school boards, we can start holding some of these principals and other people to task, even if your state government won't do it. All you have to do is take over it, seize the levers of power, and start removing these people. It's a good first step. If you guys are in a red state, same thing. Take over, outlaw, change the education regulatory policy so things like this can't happen again without consequences. Because no, I mean, at the federal level, I don't think they're going to do much anything. There'll probably be some tough talk. They'll probably do a study. They'll send out some strongly worded fundraising emails. But I don't see them really changing much in the way of policy. Because again, look at all the lawsuits that you get the minute you try. Shut the Department of Education down, send it back to the states. Some states will improve because they'll actually want to educate their students. And, blue states like this, they're just going to get worse and worse. But hopefully families continue to flee. And that will, again, help strip the power away, but also leave them with an aging population and illegal aliens. And that will help us to save this country in the long term. Because, again, if we strip the power away from a lot of these population centers, because families are all leaving, that will boost the population elsewhere and help crush them. Because let's face it, the left isn't having kids, at least not in numbers, maybe one or two. They're transing those kids. So, 40% of them are going to commit suicide before they're old enough to vote. And again, we got to start playing to win. So
yeah. Well, I think you're right. I don't think Trump can do much, and I don't think that's because he just doesn't care about it. I think you're exactly right. Trump has said from day one, education is a local game. That's why we don't need a Department of Education, a federally funded Department of Education. It should be a state's issue. And I agree. And some states are actually doing a good job with it. The one thing I do believe that Trump may do, though, Michael, is he may say, okay, you know what? There's not much I can do. You people in Illinois, if this is the way you want to destroy your kids and destroy the education system in your state, that's more power to you. But here's what I will do. I will stop all federal funding.
yes.
That I think he could do, and I think he may be pressured to at least do some funding with withholding after today's show. I mean, I hope so.
I would hope so. I mean, Biden tried to tie the school lunch program to whether or not the schools had allowed boys in the girls' room and girls in the boys' room. And they were doing this. They were stripping funding away from schools because of it. And even during lawsuits, stuff like that, they continued the policy. Eventually, they lost. But the left has no problem weaponizing dollars for their agenda. So, again, we've got to play the same game. We got to strip all federal funding, period. from all schools, and instead maybe reward schools that are doing the right thing, that are educating students, that are, kids are able to read, write, do math at grade level, and they aren't just indoctrinating the children. Let's reward them, maybe expand those programs. And in areas that are failing, we got to push for private schools and other programs. Again, that's the only way you're going to learn. We also should be databasing these teachers that are corrupt and put a list together. We can send out to private schools, make sure they're not hiring them there. I mean, I wish we would go as far as I'm saying and strip them of their teaching certificates, make sure they can't indoctrinate in the classroom ever again, and charge a lot of them with crimes, the ones that are concealing things from parents and trying to put them in these gender identity clubs and all that. Every one of them should be labeled a sex offender and not allowed around children ever again. But we're going to have to actually fight back to win, but I think it's going to have to be at the state level. And I think you're going to watch education get so bad in these blue states that eventually there'll be a rebellion there. But otherwise, just get yourself the hell out of there.
Well, I remember the documentary from years ago, Waiting for Superman. And if you've never seen that video, that documentary, you really ought to watch it. It really does, boy, it casts a very dark shadow over these teachers' unions. It really lets you know where they are. And I remind you, the very first thing Barack Obama did, the very first thing he did when he became president was he stripped all funding, federal funding from DC schools away. Why did he do that? Because the unions wanted him, not funding from all schools, all charter schools, all private schools, all Catholic schools, all of those schools, because at the behest of the teachers union, they were a threat to these to public schools. So Obama snapped to it and immediately canceled, and all these schools closed. And the documentary will just infuriate you if you watch it, because it
and that
shows
was at the same time.
What?
He's sending his two kids, if you believe they're actually his kids, to some what was that, $30,000 a year private school? Might have been more than that.
Yeah, well, it's probably more than that by now for sure. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're saying that they're hypocrites? Yeah,
Just
they
a little.
are. Of course, they're hypocrites. They're all hypocrites. Good God, these same Hollywood stars and starlets that are bitching at us about Trump. We're trying to bribe schools with fake. What's the chick from Full House that did that? That tried to get her kids on a rowing team, even though they had no experience in it because they got. You remember this?
Yeah. I don't watch all these stupid shows.
I think it was Full House was the chick. I forget her name. Doesn't really matter. The point is the hypocrisy is rampant on the left when it comes to stuff like this. They love to preach from their ivory towers, and they love to preach from behind their gated fences and walls about how the rest of us should live, but they would never deign to live and have their kid go to a school in the same place that we would have our kids go. Oh, no,
well, I'll give you another crazy one that's going on in Chicago and in Illinois and California and other states. So again, you've had these record numbers of people moving out of a lot of these blue states over the last several years. Well, they're inflating the numbers of students in a lot of school districts so they can still dump the same amount of money in there, even though they don't have enough students to justify it. Some of these schools have 50% or less of the population they're actually educating now, but they're still getting the full funding and just blowing it on, whatever they want. Protests like this, probably. Those signs aren't going to write themselves, especially when the kids are basically illiterate. How do you expect them to put together a protest side if you can't teach them to read? But anyway, it's another funding scam that's going on, and basically it's to avoid accountability. And some of these states do have vouchers and programs like that. We really do need to expand those. But honestly, I think we just have to abandon these blue states and let them collapse. Because at some point, the parents will get mad enough to do something. I guess that point we haven't got there yet.
A lot of them are, frankly. A lot of the parents that have the wherewithal are leaving. That's just it. That have the wherewithal. So who ends up suffering? The poor kids, the ones that the left pretends to give a shit about, which they don't. They care about them in as much as it's a great way of showing your virtue, but they don't really care about them. They don't really care about them. They're much more in cahoots with the big union heads and stuff. The people that they hang with at the cocktail parties and the fundraisers, in the Upper East Side and in the the rich enclaves of California. That's who they really care about. It's so unbelievably upside down. And I also saw that New York City, the Department of Education, New York City, the they have dropped so far. New York used to have a great public school system. It really did once upon a time. Now it's ranked 30th in the country. So all these idiots, these snobbish, elite East Coast liberals that sit there and mock Florida and mock the South, their schools are performing way better than New York
Yeah.
schools are right now. So screw them.
And I wonder how much of that has to do too with the open borders and the invasion that went on, because this has also created problems in a lot of these blue school districts. They don't have enough teachers that speak Spanish in Chicago, in the Chicago City schools, to deal with the influx of the children of Trinidad or Agua and whatever else that are up there that don't speak any English. They're having a problem here in Springfield. They're not having enough that speak French, because again, when you dump 20,000 Haitians in a tiny little city, or tiny, basically glorified town, they don't have the resources to deal with. Their hospitals are overwhelmed and everything else. So I'm sure that has something to do with it too.
Yeah. Now listen, this is going to be completely off the subject, but I want to ask you about it because I know we're going to be running short on time. Last week when we were on the air on your program, we were talking about, it looks like there's going to be some arrest coming down. Well, now we see the DOJ, Todd Blanche, has indicted through a federal grand jury Comey. I think this is a holding charge. I think there's probably going to be more coming up against Comey if I had to guess. But now the name John Brennan is being bantered about, that he's going to be next in line. So it looks like now, until there's prosecutions and sentencing hearings, this doesn't mean a lot to me. But what it does tell me is that people are starting to move on some of this stuff, maybe just in time for the midterms. Maybe that's the whole plan. I don't know. But Comey is now been twice indicted now, and this time through a grand jury process. What do you think about this? Are you starting to do you have any faith in the DOJ, or even a little bit more than you did last week?
Nope, zero. This is now, I guess, 9 times that they've said, oh, we're getting close to indicting Brennan. So yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. And I'm glad they finally went after Comey for the seashells. Let's see if this even makes it to trial, or if it just gets dismissed again. I do agree. I think it's a holding charge, but again, we're at 15 months now. Why not just charge him with a serious crime? I mean, they've got him dead to rights on a number of other things related to Arctic frost, even the FISA warrants that he lied to.
Well, maybe they will.
About.
Maybe that's what this is all about. Just kind of put him on ice and then really ring him up. But I mean, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see.
They couldn't even refile the charges they had last time for him and Fat Tish, Letitia James. So they waited, let the clock run out for 4 months. And honestly, these mortgage fraud charges were pretty serious. Again, they had both of them dead to rights. You just had leftist judges get in the middle of it. But even there, they left the door open. They could have continued those cases, but the DOJ failed to put anybody on it after 4 months. So no, I don't have any faith that they will move forward with.
I would only say this. I'm with you on it. That's why I wanted to ask you about it, because I kind of knew what your answer was going to be. But I would just say this. There are now a few outspoken politicians coming out. We mentioned Ron Johnson last week. Ron Johnson's going hard and heavy after Fauci now, and the NIH and the FDA for burying the facts about COVID jabs. And he's blown that story out of the water. It's absolutely true. The FDA and the National Institutes of Health, they all knew that COVID jabs, mRNA jabs, were killing kids, killing otherwise healthy young adults, showed real threats to people with comorbidities that could have gotten even more injured from the, and they buried all of this. And they buried all of this because they were making money hand over fist. That's why they buried it. And now Ron Johnson's starting to call them out, and he's also starting to say we need to really just do a blanket audit for almost every single federal program because there's outrageous amounts of grift, fraud, and outright abuse going on. Um, and I mean, I think that's only to the good. So kudos to Ron
Yeah.
Johnson for calling these folks out.
Well, it does
Oh,
need to happen. We do need to take it seriously. That's been, again, part of the problem. You mentioned Fauci. They dropped the whole auto pen case. So they try to do that quietly. So they're not going to be going after Fauci because they have no intention of getting rid of the pardon. They can, again, talk all they want, but actions speak louder than words.
true.
And
True
Harmeet
that.
Dillon dropped that case, even though, again, it seemed like we had a pretty good case. We know that the only one of these pardons that Biden signed was for Hunter, his son. But if you're not going to pursue it and even challenge it, then what's the point? I'm put up or shut up, like I keep saying. If you're going to do it, do it. But we also, I am tired of watching them. Yeah, I'm glad they arrested and raided a bunch of these Leering centers a couple days ago. But what I'm really after are all the appointed and elected political operatives that were there in the power structure in Minnesota. I want to see them go to jail. We know
It
they
was
shut
funny.
down.
It was funny watching Tim Walz try and take credit for it, though.
Yeah, well, again, I think he probably ought to just start looking for a position in China and get out of the country before they do start actually going after him, because we already have whistleblowers that go all the way up to right to his office that came forward and tried to report this fraud before and were just shut down. So,
Yeah.
he needs criminal charges, but we can't just arrest the little Somalis that were there stealing our money and then running back off to make Somalia great again. We have to start going after the people that actually allowed this to happen, the homeless industrial complex in California. We have to get the real fraudsters that were, again, stealing this money and laundering it back to spend for leftist causes or to enrich themselves. So there have to be real consequences.
Maybe we're going to start to see some because right now, as I mentioned before, Trump preparing to give this rally in Florida. And before we leave, we've shown you a whole bunch of videos of a bunch of leftist whack jobs. And frankly, some students that probably don't know what the hell they were there for, but they got a free day off of school. And that makes for good camera angles because you can see a bigger crowd than probably really does exist for this. But
Yeah.
here's a crowd of patriots. Yes, they're Trump supporters, but they love their country. They're not ashamed of their country. This is what the crowd looked like about 4.5 hours ago. Look at this video, the last one we got there. Look how long this line goes. Obviously, no audio on this video, but look at that. I mean, that is a bucket load of people. And that was, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours ago, 3 hours ago. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And they're not bitching about how much capitalism sucks. They're all, and look at that. They're orderly too. I mean, they're not, look at that. It goes across streets, keeps going and going and going. And there it ends. I mean, that's at least a mile right there, damn close to it.
Yeah. I heard they had that it was going to fit 17,000 people, I believe. And I know they were at capacity already this morning. I actually know a few people that are down at that rally in the Villages.
Yeah,
I
I
used to
do
live in
too.
Orlando. So, yeah, a few of my friends are there that had they showed up about 10 in the morning to make sure they could get in.
Yeah, I know a guy that I used to, well, up until last week, I threw darts with him in my dart league, and he moved down to the Villages, and he said, I'm going to get down there just in time to go to Trump's rally. So he's definitely in that line. I couldn't make him out, but it was a helicopter shot.
Yeah. It tends to be, it's kind of they got to zoom in a little more for that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, man, listen, Michael, thank you for joining me today, man. Any more brilliant words of wisdom, pearls, nuggets, anything you got?
Get involved in your local elections. A lot of states, the primaries aren't over with. Well, we can remove some of these rhinos. We just need to coalesce. And if you're able to, run for your city council or your school board, even if it's just to be a bomb thrower and help highlight what they're doing, because we've got to take these institutions back. We have to cripple the left from the bottom up and the top down. And we have to, again, rebuild society where these people are outcasts and they can never hold power again.
Well, I think that is some beautiful words of wisdom there, and it's true. Remember this, folks. The left is like rust. They never sleep. They continually plan. They continually organize. The right, because we're busy, we have jobs, we have families, we've got social commitments, we've got family commitments. We tend to kind of sit on our hands a lot. But it's important to know these folks are not sitting on their hands at all. They are looking to reach into your pockets and take your money by way of taxpayer dollars or whatever else to take over your communities. Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. If you can run for school board, run for the school board.
Yep.
If not to be a bomb thrower, at least a whistleblower. You definitely want to take power back inside your community. So well said, Michael. Anyway, listen, folks, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me. We will be back for Right Hook next week, next Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard, just like we were today. And who knows, maybe I'll see you during the course of the week with Michael on his program. But have a great weekend. Thank you, Michael. Have a good one, brother. Goodbye.
Thanks again. Thanks for having me. Bye.